Hey everyone, Chris here. Thanks a lot for clicking onto the remindhealth.com channel. We really do appreciate it. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to disassemble, clean, and rebuild a Berkey water filtration or water purification system. Specifically, this right here is the Big Berkey water system that we use every single day for drinking and also for cooking. Being that we use it every single day, it does require some maintenance. We typically have a maintenance schedule of every 4 to 6 weeks or so. We break it down and clean it just like what we're going to show you here today. So to start the process, we just need to gather up a couple of basic items. First, get a couple of old towels. You're going to need this just to place some of the parts of the Berkey and also to dry things up as we're working. It's really important that we get brand new, never used sponges for this process. And the kind of sponges that you need are the ones that are sponges on one side and scrubbers on the other. I'll show you why here in just a moment. And then next, we're just going to need a bowl and some antibacterial dish soap. The bowl is going to be used for all the parts. Each one of those parts I like to clean individually. For those of you not familiar with a Berkey water purification system, it only comes in a few different parts. It's a very simple, easy to use system. It requires no electricity and it's totally gravity fed, which is really nice. The major parts of the system is the top tank, which is where you pour your raw water. In our case, we're using tap water. But what's great about a Berkey is you can also use lake water or stream water. It will purify water from questionable sources. Below here, we have the drain tank, and this is the tank where the purified water is, and then there's a spigot down here below where you can put your glass underneath there to get water. So if you're looking at buying a Berkey system, I would also recommend the stand. The stand keeps it up off the counter so that you can put a glass underneath there and get water whenever you want it. There's also a top here, which just keeps the top covered. I'm going to remove that for just a moment. Now, if you can take a look in here, the inside the top tank, which is where your raw water again goes. In this case, I've got 4 Berkey, or these are called Black Berkey water filters. Whenever you fill this up with water, the water has to go through microscopic openings inside the filters and then filters down to the tank below. Berkey will send this system out with just 2. I added 2 more. And so if you only get 2, which is fine, it'll work great with just 2, Berkey will send you plugs so that you can plug the 2 extra holes down at the bottom of the top tank. All right, so if we lift off the top tank here, I've also got 4 water fluoride filters. And these go on the bottom of each one of the 4 black filters inside of the tank. These white filters also filter out heavy metals. So first step is to take this off. Once you have the top tank off, there's going to be a little bit of water down at the bottom, so I'm going to drain that out and then keep it upside down and place it on the counter. So now we've got the bottom tank and the top tank opened. I'm going to drain a little bit of water out that's in here as well. I'm going to put the bottom tank aside for just one moment. Okay, so here's the top tank, and we've got the 4 fluoride filters on the top. They are secured to the bottoms of each one of the black filters that are inside of the top tank. So you just unscrew each one. And I'm going to get a towel here and place the towel back here and put each one of these filters back here on the towel. Now, you know, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we use this Berkey every single day. And we do this because there are a lot of contaminants in tap water, from PVC piping, lead pipes, metal pipes, and also runoff, like petrochemical runoff, that the municipal water systems are just unable to remove. There's a lot more information in our Optimum Health Masterclass, and we teach why you need a water purification device and why it's so important for optimum health. There's a link in the description below. I strongly suggest you go and check that out. Okay, so now that we've got the fluoride filters off, this is essentially the bottom of the 4 filters that are inside of the raw filter tank, or the raw water tank. And so they're secured on here by just these little nuts. So we're going to take each one of them off. The way I do this is I hold it slightly over the sink here so I can feel the top of the filter with my fingers here. And I do this because these are plastic and I don't like to torque torque them too much by placing a lot of weight and a lot of pressure on their side. So I like to keep it up and down just like this. And so by placing your fingers underneath here, you can feel the top of the filter, and then you can unscrew each one of them individually and take them down. And actually, before I do this, let me grab my bowl, because I'm going to start putting all these parts in my bowl. So there's the first one. All right, and so here's the first filter. This is what they look like when they're out of the Berkey. And once again, if you can see clearly here, the water has to go through microscopic chambers inside of this filter here to get to the center to drain out. And along the way, it filters a lot of things out of the water before it even gets to the fluoride filters. On the bottom here, there's a washer that keeps it from leaking. And I've never once had any water leak from the top tank to the bottom past these washers, which are great. So the washer and the nut just goes in the bowl. And then I take this and place it aside here. And then I move on to the next filter. Okay, so we have essentially completely disassembled now the top tank. So this is what's left of the top tank. And once again, since we've got 4 holes in the bottom of this tank, if you've only got 2 of these filters instead of 4, Berkey will give you 2 plugs to go in the 2 other slots. So obviously you don't have any water coming through. I'm going to take this and place it aside for just a moment. Now for the bottom tank. Now with the bottom tank empty, it comes with this rubber seal on the bottom. It just comes right off. And I usually just put it aside. And all we need to disassemble on this one is the spigot. So there's a spigot here, there's a washer, and then inside of here you can see that there's the inlet right there, and then a nut and another washer. So I'm just going to take those apart. The best way to do that is once you have this put down here like this, you can turn the spigot just a little bit while you turn the nut on the inside. All right, so that just pulls right off. I'm going to put this down for a second. So here you've got a washer that butts up right against the front of the spigot there. Just comes right off. And once again, I'm going to place it in the bowl. And then on the other side, you've got another washer and a little nut there. So all of this stuff here goes in the bowl. And so now we have the bottom clean tank. Okay, so the next step in the process is to get some of your antibacterial dish soap. Just put some of that in there. Doesn't take much. And some water. Okay, so just mix that around and I just let that sit while we're doing the rest of the process here. Okay, so now what we have left are the 4 filters, the 4 black filters and the 4 fluoride filters. And each of these need to be cleaned while that is soaking. And then in just a few minutes, we're also going to take care of washing the inside of these tanks. But first, let's get the hard work done first. What I like to do is I like to set up another clean towel here. Place that there, maybe get a bigger one. So now I've got an extra towel placed there. So once I clean the filters, I'm going to put the clean filters on a nice clean towel and set those aside. So here is where your sponges come in with the scrubber on the one side. Again, these are brand new, never used. So what I do is I turn the water on. It can be warm. And then grab your first filter here and run it under the water. Water your sponge down here. And so once it's soaking wet, you don't need to wring it out. All you really need to do is start scrubbing the black filter element with the scrubber side of the sponge, just like this. So essentially what you're doing is you're removing a microscopic top layer of the filter element and exposing nice new open microscopic passageways for the water to fit through the filter and filter out all the contaminants, leaving it on the outside. So essentially the contaminants will clog those microscopic holes eventually and make the water filter filters slowly, and that's kind of where we are right now. It's also important to note too that since these are in the top tank, whenever you fill it up, the water level will eventually come down. And so what that means is that the bottom part of the filter is always filtering, and this is the bottom part here will always clog up faster. And since the top part is filtering less often, since the water level is coming down, the top usually needs a little bit less work than the bottom. So I always start with the bottom first. So you just kind of scrub it on one side and then turn it to make sure you get all the way around the bottom. And then I just turn it around and I just do the top, because the top, again, it doesn't need nearly as much work as the bottom of the filter. And then I usually turn it around, use the other side of the sponge here with no soap. You don't want to use any soap on the filters. And I just kind of wipe down the bottom of the filter where the washer and the bolt go. Just kind of wipe it down like this. And that's pretty cool, but you can see like how it just kind of soaks up the water that's sitting on top of it because the water is going through the filter. That's how you know it's working well. So that's it. And then you move on to the next filter. All right, now that we're all done with the 4 black filters, and it's interesting because they look like they're all dry because the water has gone through the filters there, which is pretty cool. Now it's time to move on to the white fluoride and heavy metal filters. Now these, I typically will just rinse down, and if I feel like they need it, you can use a little bit of dish soap on the outside of them and just clean them off, but they really do feel like they're pretty clean. So I'm not going to go ahead and I'm not going to use any soap. Now Berkey will send you plugs that go into the ends of these on both sides. So if you do want to wash them down with soap, you certainly can soap up the outside and rinse them off without getting soap on the inside. But I'm not going to do that today. I think I'm just going to rinse them down. They feel pretty good. All right, with that done, with the 4 filters of each washed down and set aside, we've still got all the parts over here in the bowl soaking in antibacterial soap. It's now time to move on to the tanks. I usually just start off with the top tank. The top tank being that this is where the raw water goes. You don't have to really be too worried about this being super duper clean, but what you do want to do is make sure that the bottom is clean. So what I do is I wash it and then I place it upwards like this, so that way, you know, this doesn't, you know, get on a dirty counter or something along those lines, because clean water, if you fill it up really full, can come up to the top right here. And you'll notice that it does sit down inside of the drain tank just a little bit. So if water gets up to this point, it's already almost too full. But if it does, you don't want the clean water touching a dirty surface here. So this is the really important part to keep clean. So what I do is I just use the same sponge I just used on the filters. That's why I do the filters first, so I can use the sponge then on the tanks, because you don't want to do the tanks and then clean the filters. Got a little soap here. Okay, so again, we want to make sure that this is really clean. So I'm gonna put some soap on this directly. All right, so once you've got this surface clean, once again, set it aside with the surface facing up. Now it's time to move on to the bottom tank. Now obviously this one's pretty important because this is where your clean water filters down into. All right, so once we have that done, just make sure you rinse down the inside really well. Okay, so once this is all done, I usually put this one aside. You can do it normal side up because obviously no fresh water is going to be touching the bottom. So now go ahead and take your last towel, dry your hands off here a little bit, and then I dry off the tanks just on the outside. I usually don't dry off the inside. Okay, so now that I've got the outsides a little bit dried off here. What I also do too is, since we're going to be putting everything back together here in just a minute, I like to dry off the inside right around the openings here where the washers are going to go. It just helps to have a dry place for the washers to seal so we don't have any leaks. Even though I've never had any leaks, it's just something that I like to do. And then I do the same thing here on the clean tank. Right here where the spigot goes, I just like to dry off the inside right there where the washers are going to go. So that way we have a nice good seal whenever we put everything back together. Okay, so now we have the filters done, we have the tanks done. All we have left now is our bowl full of parts that we need to rinse off and put aside so we can put everything back together again. Now, real quick before we move on, so this is the spigot. So the spigot, I like to clean it on the inside as well. And so what I like to do is open it up like this and let the soap get in there. And then we really need to make sure that we're rinsing the inside of it out really well. So cycle that just a couple of times. And so then we start rinsing. So once again, it's really important to get the inside of this rinsed down really well. So lock it open and then run water through it just like this. Make sure you're getting all the internal parts cleaned off. So now that we're all done with that, I like to dry off each one of the parts. Again, kind of the same reason why I dried off the inside of the tanks where they're going to be meeting the stainless steel. I just want to make sure that it has a nice seal on there and there's not a lot of water inside of it. That takes care of drying off all the parts. So now we have clean, dry parts. We have clean filters. We've got clean tanks. Now it's just time to rebuild everything. I like to start with the bottom tank. So if you remember from before, we've got this black rubber bumper here that goes on the bottom. So that just helps it to have a little bit of traction whenever it's sitting on top of the stand. So now we have the opening right here for the spigot. Let me see if I can get all the parts. All right, so here's the first part here. You can see that there's a flat space right there. And this washer has a rounded side and a flat side. So you want to take the flat side and put it in to so that it meets up with the flat side of the spigot. And then there's another washer and the nut that holds it all together. Okay, so once you have the spigot put on here loosely, tighten it up on the inside here. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see the back end of it here. So what I'm doing is I'm tightening up that bolt there. And you can only do it so tight with your fingers. So what I do is I let the spigot rotate about 1/4 of a turn and then hold it on the inside and then torque it from the spigot side. And that's usually tight enough so that you don't have any leaks. Okay, now we got a little bit more to do. This is easy to put together, although there seems like there's a lot of parts here. It's really not very complicated. So the first thing I'll show you is that we've got these big rubber washers here. These go on the bottom of the black filters. So what I do is I just kind of stage them up one by one. So here are the nuts that hold them on to the bottom of the, or I should say the inside of the tank. So, and as I mentioned before, I don't like a lot of torque on these things with them sitting sideways. So what I like to do is I'll put this sideways like this and then put each one of them in loosely, starting with the bottom. So you can see I've got the washer is on the other side and then the nut goes on this side. So I'll put this in loosely and I'll do that for all four. Okay, so now I've got all four filters in here. They're loose. Now just turn this upside down. So now just like we took them off, we're going to put them on the same way. So upside down, Just feel for the bottom of the filter, hold it up against the bottom of the tank here, and then you can torque these things down. Now, these are plastic, and so you can't torque them down too tight. Otherwise, you'll strip the plastic threads. So you want to do it tight, but not real tight. With that done, now each one of these fluoride filters screws right onto the bottom of the black filters. Now you'll see here that it's got an arrow here with the flow. So obviously, since the water is going to be flowing through the filters out the spigot, the flow is going to be coming this way since we've got everything upside down. And it only threads on one side, so that it's impossible to put them on wrong. Now inside of here, you can't see it on the camera. There's like a mesh filament in there. So you don't want to put these on and torque it down. That's not what you want to do. The water just drips out of the bottom of the black filters and drips into the fluoride filters. And so you don't really need to have it torqued down in order for that process to happen. I think Berkey recommends that you turn this 7 times or maybe 8 times. So just count how many times you see that go by, and that's really about it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's about it. You don't need to torque it down. That's it. So you repeat that same thing with all 4. All right, with that done, we've already got the bottom part of the Berkey put back together here. So let's pull it back over so you can see it. So here it is, spigot, everything's clean. So now real quick, we're just gonna flip this over and it goes right into the top filter and you are all done. So now all you've got to do is fill up the top tank and allow the water to filter into the bottom, and you have clean, purified, defluorinated water that you can use every single day just like we do. Okay everyone, well that's all there is to cleaning a Big Berkey water filtration system. Again, I've got links to the Berkey website down below and also a link to our Optimum Health Masterclass, which goes into detail about why you really should and you need to purify your water, not just filter it. Those are 2 different things. So you want to make sure you purify your water, and a Berkey is a great way to do that. And there's some other products out there that I really don't have any experience with that you can also check out. ProPure is one of them as well. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the content of this video. I hope it helps you. Leave your comments below and let us know if there's anything else that we can provide as far as information. Give us a big thumbs up if you like the content of this video, and we have a lot more content coming. So also we'd love it if you'd subscribe. Okay, well we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.